Hello, and thank you for joining us for this Spotify for Artists Masterclass. My name is Brian Johnson. I'm on the music team at Spotify, working with you, the artist community, to provide some tips, tricks, and best practices to help you develop your fan base and put you in the best possible position for success. This masterclass is being filmed from here, our artist lounge at Spotify London, as well as the Power Station in New York, a legendary recording studio now part of Berkeley NYC, where we're going to be heading to shortly. It's a brilliant space. I've had the privilege of recording there myself in the past, playing drums, and it's also where legends such as David Bowie, Madonna, Herbie Hancock, and Lady Gaga have all recorded huge, iconic records. Now, this episode is an exciting one. Of all the requests and all the feedback we've received from the artist community on what topics to cover in these masterclasses, there is one word and one request that really sticks out, and that is playlists. There's a clear interest and a clear desire to know more about this topic, so that's exactly what we're going to be focusing on. In this episode, we'll be taking a look at the different types of playlists in the ecosystem and the different places where listening and discovery can happen on Spotify. We'll be hearing from Selena Ong, our global head of editorial, as well as representatives from our editorial team around the world, including Joel Borquay and Yasmin Muller. I'm really pleased. I'm very excited to have the team with us for this episode to give you a deeper understanding as to how they work and how Spotify works, and some further insights into the editorial process. What are some best practices when pitching new music for playlist consideration, and how songs can travel through our playlist ecosystem and find a global audience. We'll also be hearing from Ali Raymond, artist manager and CEO of the artist development company Beatnik. Ali works with artists including Arlo Parks, Miso Extra, and Lana Lubani, and joins us to talk about the topic of playlists and discovery from his and his artist's perspective. So, where playlists fit into an artist's overall strategy, what's important to look out for once a track has been playlisted, and what actions can be taken by artists to increase their connection with their fans. Okay, let's set some foundations by outlining the key ways in which music discovery happens on Spotify, where the streams come from, and where playlists fit in. To do this, I'm going to reference our Made to Be Found site, a resource that provides a guide for artists to better understand how fans find their music on Spotify. And you should see the URL on screen for that right now. First up, we've got streams that come from editorial playlists. These are playlists that are made by editors at Spotify, a team of passionate music fans based all over the world listening to your tracks, using sharp ears, data insights, and a deep understanding of cultural trends to place your music in front of new and existing fans. Our editors are curating playlists such as Rap Caviar, Fuego, and Planet Rave, catering to all different genres, moods, and moments. Next up are personalized streams. These come from playlists, they come from mixers, radio, and they come from recommendations that are made for you. Essentially, personalized to each individual Spotify listener based on their taste profile and a range of different signals, including time of day, things like genre, and the listening habits of fans with similar taste. This bucket of personalized streams that we're talking about here, it's really powerful, and it accounts for around 1/3 of new artist discoveries on Spotify. In this bucket are playlists such as Discover Weekly, Release Radar, Blend, you might recognize a few of those names, as well as personalized playlists including Beast Mode, Songs to Sing in the Shower, and Smooth Jazz, to name just a few. Let's take Smooth Jazz as an example for how this works. So I might follow that playlist, a friend of mine might follow the same playlist, but we both have a slightly different view, a track list, and a different listening experience that is personalized to our individual tastes. And finally, we've got streams that come from active sources. We call these Made by You. These streams, these listens, are from fans who aren't just sitting back waiting for new music. They are leaning in, they are actively finding tracks, and they are saving those tracks to their collections and playlists through search, directly from your artist profile, and through other users' playlists. Interesting fact on this, the majority of streams on Spotify come from active sources, with almost 3/4 of active streams coming from catalog. That is, tracks that are over 18 months old. And we're going to touch on catalog a bit more later on. So, Streams from editorial playlists, personalized recommendations, active sources. There are multiple ways in which people can discover your music on Spotify. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all situation, which is really, really positive because it just gives you way more opportunities for your music to be heard and for your fan base to broaden all around the world. What we're going to do now is hear directly from our editorial team for their thoughts, their insights into how they see it all working from their side, and very much giving us an opportunity to demystify the editorial playlist process on Spotify. I'm now going to hand it over to Selena Ong, who's at the Power Station Studios in New York, to explain more.
I'm Selena Ong. I'm the global head of editorial at Spotify, and I listen to a lot of music. I actually started at a record label and then moved into artist management, and then also worked in the live concert side, and then went into streaming. And that background really is a perfect combination for the role that I have now, because it really gives me a full understanding of an artist's journey and those really core things that artists focus on and really need to think about as they move through their career. I would say over the past 2 years, culture and culture from around the world has really proliferated and spread and gained popularity, largely due to streaming and how that's really opened up a world of music from other countries and from other languages. So now we see music from Korea, from Southeast Asia, from Africa, from LATAM, really leading the charge in terms of some of the biggest artists in the world and the most important genres. Some of the best playlists that are coming out of emerging markets that come to mind, from Africa, for example, African Heat, Amapiano Grooves, from LATAM, Sad Sireno, Mansion Reggaeton, from Southeast Asia, K-pop On, particularly great if you want to be across the latest new and emerging K-pop artists coming out of the region. So Spotify is available in 183 markets, and we have nearly 200 editors who are spread all across the world. The cultural expertise of editors is really important to our philosophy. We have experts in genres, in markets, that really know music and music culture inside out. No one knows the local music scene better than they do. And so yes, data is interesting and we do look at that. But at the core, it's really about marrying that human cultural expertise with the best of technology. And that's how we curate. We have many playlists that I would say are very focused on the music culture that they're based in. Rap Caviar being one, for example, Viva Latino being another one that comes to mind. They also exist outside of the playlist. And what I mean by that is it really is steeped in what's happening in the clubs, what people are listening to, and really extends beyond the playlist. So whether it's a podcast or a Punchliners concert that we've curated, it's really about thinking about that scene, that music culture, and representing it, both in our playlists as well as outside of it. You are going to meet two members of my editorial team. Joelle is a senior editor in the UK and Ireland. You'll also hear from Yasmin Muller, who is in the editorial team across LATAM.
I am an editor and I work with music programming for a long time, but I really don't like the idea of someone that actually has their taste above everyone else's. I don't believe that at all. We are here to actually represent what the audience tells us. So we need to have diverse teams and make the work more collective.
We're not necessarily like programming things that like we personally like. I always feel that if there's a track that's of a decent level, then there should be a place for it to live. And if there isn't a place for it to live, then we need to make one. Obviously that's a big goal because there's so much music, but that's essentially where we're like, what we're aiming to get to.
I don't think there is like good and bad music. I think what we try to do is get the right music in front of the right people and understand what they tell us and adjust to the audience behavior and the audience culture. I'm a generalist, so I check a lot of different genres. Some people are more focused on specific universes and specific countries. So you have to go as deep as you can within the universe that you're like assigned to make sure that you cover the most submissions as you can.
I look after different music genres, hip hop, R&B, a lot of Caribbean music genres, which includes dancehall, soca, and reggae, and a lot of like African music genres. I go to all the shows, and because I live in that, I feel like my job is to represent that at Spotify. So a normal day is like picking which one of those genres to like really hone in on. Say if today is the day where I look at hip hop, I'm literally going into the pitching tool, looking at my hip hop filters, and even under that, there's like many subgenres within that. That could be drill, rap, it could be alternative hip hop, it could be conscious hip hop. When we're trying to like hone in on a specific like subgenre, we really go into the detail on the pitching tool. I then also come out of Spotify and look around, like go out, see what's happening in that market, and making sure we're reflective of what's actually happening in that scene.
So you can find the playlist submission tool on Spotify for artists. So we recommend at least 7 days before the release date, because that helps us not only on the editorial side of programming, but also it helps you get into the personalized playlist like Release Radar.
So a lot of people think you have to know someone at Spotify to be added on the playlist, and that couldn't be more than not true. In this role, I've never ever found anything off of a DM, ever, which is crazy. The best way for me to be across music is via the pitching tool, because that's my inbox. Like I read more pitches than I do emails. We have like tools designed to find these pitches and like find these tracks out of nowhere.
We try to check everything that comes through, and I mean we as a global team. So it's very important for us to understand the context and also as much detail as we can when we see something submitted in the tool. So we check genres, we check location, we check language. There's also a lot of deep fields like instrumentation, if it's a cover, if it's a remix. So it depends on what type of work you're doing as an editor. But we do have access to everything. And I think the most interesting part of it is the description.
Some people just leave it blank. Don't leave it blank. There's no like set way to how to write a pitch. I do love it when they tag their social media though, because it's like when you hear something that you're like, wow, who's this? When you go into their social media and you kind of like find out more about them, it's like, it adds more interest. If you feel like you know who your audience is, tell us. And we'll make sure we get it to the right editor. If you have playlists in mind that you feel like your music sits alongside, you can put it in the description and we can tag it to the relevant editor and see if it works for them.
For me, the pitch stands out when you have some context on that artist. So if it's a small artist, I like to understand like the background and what's like the scene that they come from and stuff like that. When it's a more established artist, it's amazing to understand what's the current situation in their career, what is the strategy that they're going for, and also just the personal take. So what is that specific release about? What do they go for with this release?
When an artist already has a following and they're kind of like on their way, shall I say, it's really interesting to know, I guess, how we can best support the release and seeing what else is happening outside of Spotify. Obviously, we love Spotify, but it's good to know what are their like marketing drivers, what is in their schedule coming up, are they playing live, and it just helps us create a better context, not just for a playlist ad, but also when we're having internal conversations about different opportunities like global music programs or marketing initiatives. If I want to submit you as an artist for not just a playlist, but for those marketing campaigns, it's good to know they actually have a tour coming up. They're actually about to be featured in this magazine. They're going to be in this territory soon. Those are the kinds of things I need to make wider decisions than just like adding them to a playlist.
I think most editors focus on all types of artists from all sizes and all career levels. It's a very big point of why we're here, right? Is to make people discover new music, and that comes with developing artists as well. Of course, also if we're looking at culture and music trends, we are always looking for what's coming next. So it's also why we check a lot of smaller developing artists, because they are basically the future of music consumption. So we need to be very much aware of that and bring that insight into the company in general as well, to other teams and other editors. A big part of our work is that rush you get when you find a very small and very unknown artist that you flag to your fellow editors, and when you see it a year later, they are big. And that happens quite a lot. We work as I would say, an organism of almost 200 people worldwide. We have different levels and different layers of collaboration and communication with each other. We have the global GCGs, right? The global curation groups that are around main genres.
Across 2020 and 2021, we playlisted 150,000 artists for the very first time. That's what motivates an editorial team. So by genre, every week, editors from around the world come together and they talk about the music that's coming from their local cities, from the countries that they live in, and they advocate and champion for artists and tracks that they really believe in, that they know have an audience, that are reacting well, gaining momentum. And that inspires, for example, an editor in London to listen to a track that's coming out of Johannesburg. And that cross-pollination of ideas, of sounds, is really core to how we curate.
Sharing ideas, talking about performance, talking about upcoming tracks, talking about trends that we're seeing and flagging to each other. Then we have regional committees and regional groups of editors that talk about either universes or genres or trends that we see, and we are always trying new things.
Because of the pitching tool, you might find something that doesn't necessarily work in your space, or you might find something that does but could also work in another space. So then you like message another editor saying, hey, I just found this. I actually don't know what you think of it, but I just wanted to send it to you. And that happens all the time. And sometimes you get things that get sent to you like, this is sick and it's different. Like the other day, my colleague Shannon sent me like an indie drill track. And that's how you find also new emerging genres. It's the artist and the music that is connecting with the audience. I can put, you know, something on a huge playlist and it might get loads of streams, but it also might not connect. Never like underestimate those really like small, impactful lists, because they do have like people that want to discover new artists, want to be invested, want to like invest their money, buy the merch, but like, and actually discover new music. That's the music you should be aiming to create, not ones that are just like gonna get you like loads of streams. Streams are amazing, but building audiences, building fan bases that like will build you like longevity in the industry.
As editors, we are looking at many things in terms of a performance of a song, when to move a song into a playlist. That includes both looking at listeners' reactions in the playlist, how many people are listening to the song organically on Spotify, but also looking outside of Spotify and looking at wider culture, at social media. Is the artist performing in a particular city? How did that concert go? We think about all of those things when we're curating.
In a chill list, if you don't have a massive amount of saves, that's okay. Like, I want people to be chilling, listening to that playlist. They don't need to be like leaned in, finding music, trying to save it to their libraries. In something like a chill list, a low skip rate is a perfect marker of a song doing well. There's some playlists, like one called Wash Day. Black people, like, we take ages to wash our hair. We need a playlist that is like hours long. In a like a frontline new music, like popular list, I know that people listen to those lists, skipping through just to see what they like. So I'm also not mad at like a high skip rate in those kind of playlists. I guess what we do look for is a save rate and see if people are really liking it, saying, oh, I love this, and saving it to the library.
As an editorial team, we think about what our playlist hypothesis is. And what that means essentially is, what's the theme? What's the purpose of the playlist? And who's the audience? That informs then the music that goes into that, whether that's a new release or it can be an older track as well. What's called in the business catalog. So catalog essentially can be a song that is 18 months old or older. So whether that's 20 months or 20 years, that's considered catalog.
Things just become catalog as it goes. So we have a lot of playlists that we program some stuff, and when you see it, well, this is a catalog track now. We have a lot of tools, internal tools that help us understand whatever is happening on the culture. So we have insights on like what people are looking for in terms of search, what are people obsessing about, like what tracks are on repeat in terms of demographics and location. So most of our work is trying to like understand what the metrics are saying to us in terms of audience behavior. I think the editors really focus on understanding audiences more than anything. So of course we are promoting music, but we also need to understand our audiences to promote the right music.
Many people discover older music, songs that have been released in the past, as new. And for example, I think Kate Bush, Running Up That Hill, is a really great example of a sync on Stranger Things that really triggered the imagination of new listeners. And we saw that really early. We started testing it in playlists and it really took on a life of its own. That song is a bigger hit now than it was 37 years ago. And it's been introduced to an audience that have never known Kate Bush before, which was really inspiring and interesting to see.
When artists kind of come up, they come up in a scene. For instance, when you know, the internet, you know, Tyler the Creator, you know, Frank Ocean, and you want to associate yourselves with artists that you like. So artist curated playlists are super powerful. Creating those playlists, another artist will see, oh wow, like I actually like this artist and they like my music. And then even if you don't even work together, the fact that you guys are then supporting each other shows that you're coming up in the scene and that you're just kind of sharing fan bases. And that's always really good because there's always like power in numbers, they say.
It gives you a little window into the artist and what might be happening in their life. People are interested in what an artist is listening to themselves. So is that a new artist that they're listening to? Is that an older artist that has always been part of their references and influences? Those things really interest fans and listeners. So I really encourage any artist to look at that and think about how they could use that creatively. We refer to a playlist pyramid at Spotify, and essentially what that is, it's an ecosystem of playlists that work together. When we created it, we were really thinking about an artist's journey. So how do you build an audience for an artist or for a song? And there are many paths to the top of the pyramid, which is those really big playlists that we've mentioned before. But the journey to success isn't just one path because the diversity of artists, of sounds, is enormous. And so a journey could start in New Music Friday or in a genre playlist. When it's proven itself in that playlist, it can branch out and then be tested in other playlists, and that journey becomes more familiar to an audience. It gains more listeners. An editor could speak to another editor in a different market, and it could start to appear in another country's playlists, and that's how music moves through our ecosystem. It's what we refer to as a playlist pyramid.
One of my favorite examples is an artist called Simba, who didn't have much listeners or much presence on Spotify, much followers at all. And I found this track called Rover, and it was like instantly a banger. It was such a good tune. And I was like, okay, who's this guy? So I read the pitch. He left the link to the music video, watched the music video. I was like, oh, this is cool. It also never really had any views. And sometimes when you're introducing an artist, you kind of feed them through smaller playlists to see how they work, and you just kind of feed it up. But the way this track was done, it was like so commercially ready that I tested it in actually quite a few spaces, and instantly it held up. So I moved it from We Move into Afro Bashment. It held up in Afro Bashment, moved it from Afro Bashment to Huey B, which is a really competitive list that only has 50 tracks, and these are like 50 of the most popular tracks in hip-hop, R&B, and dancehall. And it held up so much so within like maybe 3 weeks. It was the best performing track in that list. Oh yeah, that track ended up in today's top hits, which is Spotify's biggest playlist. So that was like a really exciting thing. And that's a like great example of a track just being found and like knowing it could work for a specific audience.
When I think about how to grow a fan base or a listenership, there are many components that go into that. Playlists being one, but marketing and growing a fan base, both on Spotify and social media, is also key. So thinking about how you engage with your audience, that can be by way of live through merch, through social media, looking at all the tools that Spotify provides as well. The artist profile page, encouraging people to follow you on your artist profile, the artist curated playlists, linking out to your live shows. All of these things together really is the key. And so my advice is always to really approach it in that way and make sure that you're not concentrating all of your efforts just on one space and really thinking about the entire picture and how they dovetail and work in lockstep together.
Thanks to Selena, Joel, and Yasmin for joining us and giving us a look under the hood at how they work, how music can travel around the Spotify playlist ecosystem, and for some real good insights and best practices when pitching music for playlist consideration. It was really interesting to touch on catalog and how tracks that pick up syncs are seeing a jump in new listeners. This is something we explore in detail in our recent fan study catalog edition, where we take a look at the catalog lift for artists with a Netflix sync. We partnered with Netflix to analyze a set of syncs and noticed that not only do artist discoveries jump between 50% and 6,000%, but the rest of the artist catalog will get a boost also. You can check out more insights on catalog music on Fan Study, which you'll find on Spotify for Artists. Now, I'm very pleased to welcome Ali Raymond, who's going to talk through how playlists and music discovery fit into his artist day-to-day and wider campaign strategy. Over to Ali.
I'm Ali Raymond. I'm a music manager based in London. I'm also CEO of Beatnik Creative. We represent 3 artists across the board: Arlo Parks, Miso Extra, and Lana Lubani. We're sort of an unconventional management company. We're more of an artist development company. So part of that, we have our record label. And we've just merged with Blue Raincoat Artists, which also manages fantastic artists like Phoebe Bridgers, Nova Twins, and Cigarettes After Sex. And it kind of plays into the idea that we want to be part of a bigger family, a wider community. For me, the ethos of breaking artists, it's really getting to know who they are and where they're from and try and tell their story, both visually and sonically. We look at all different areas of artists when we're trying to help them break through. As a manager, you're really the infrastructure, you're underneath them, you're a scaffolding of support, right? I think what I've really enjoyed over the years is humanizing the process for artists, because it is a music industry. There is a sense of technical things that you have to do, but really it keeps coming back to the same thing of telling their story. How are we best representing that and their identity? Like everything that you put out should be an extension of yourself. It's not just about submitting the song and trying to get playlists. It's looking at it holistically and thinking, right, where will this sit at radio? Where will this sit with brands? How will this connect with artists in media? Before we even submit, we kind of consider, do we have everything else ready to go? So it just has its best chance. So that song has its best chance to exist in the sphere of Spotify. Playlist to me, it's about discovery. It's such an incredible tool when used properly to build an audience. You can bring people from all across the world into your artist world, and I think playlisting is crucial to finding audiences outside of your home territory. And also today, that I think musicians are so much more international, and it's because of the way that playlisting works and also the way that people discover music. I think it's really helped that. It's really kind of leveled the playing field a little bit for discovering, especially indie artists. 25 years ago, there was more of a club, a closed industry, and I think money was the driving force in determining where and how your music was broken, whether it be through radio or big marketing campaigns. Playlisting levels it out for the artist who's making music in their bedroom or signed to an indie or eventually signed to a major. It's really kind of a really fantastic and exciting time, I think, for music when you think about it like that. When submitting music for any of our artists, we use the playlist pitch tool. Giving the editorial team and people time to discover is really, really important for us. And I know if things are rushed, that's when you're less likely to get success. The way I try to see it is there's another human on the other side that's going to listen to the song. So when we try to include information, we don't want to be too robotic about it, and we want to kind of give some sense of emotion within the context of the song. And we talk about other areas of their industry. So for example, like live, if it's going really well on the live side, if it's going really well on radio. But really it's about mood as well. We don't have to be in one lane. And we can use tags in a way that makes sure that the music might be positioned on one playlist over here and it's a completely different playlist over there, just increasing the opportunity to get that audience. So I think mood's really important. Your first track might not be on all the official playlists, but it's about having sort of consistency and sort of, I don't know, believing in the process in many ways. One of the examples that spring to mind where we learn a lot is Arlo's campaign with her early releases. So when we put up Cola, for example, we weren't getting any Spotify editorial really. But where we did see success was from other user playlists and from other tastemaker playlists like KCRW, for example, or Dummy magazine or something like that. When we then uploaded Superstar Generation, we started to see much more editorial from Spotify. You know, and I think there is something really amazing to see the music every time you do a release being put back in the same playlist. Arlo, for example, when we started working with her, one of her all-time favorite playlists is Pollen. That's all she wanted to be on. Like, she didn't care about anything else. There was a couple other things outside of our playlisting that she wanted to do, but Pollen was like, I need to be on that Pollen playlist because I listened to that religiously. So when we got like the first and second songs on there, it was a really romantic moment because she felt like she was sat in this club of artists that she admired and adored. So with the editorial team, I think they obviously like started to see that with her music, and she was constantly on that type of playlist, Pollen or Butter or others. And I think it's just nice to see that consistency. We've also found really great success with being on other people's playlists. We all just sort of jumped out of our seat with Arlo's campaign last year where, you know, Obama put her on his playlist. Then we see it off platform, like at socials and other socials, you start to see artists sharing each other's music. It talks to a wider community. Artist curated playlists are like a crucial tool for us, you know. With Miso Extra, with Miso Verse, she has real fun with making playlists. And one of them is Miso Mix. She's really put it together in a way where she's considered her artwork, the way that she approaches it, but also the diversity of the music that she's sharing. There's a personality that just jumps off the page with that, right? And I think there's no better present than sort of sharing new music with people. So we definitely push our artists to explore that more, you know, and I think it's a really crucial tool to use. And with all these things, with all platforms, you can't just consider them as on their own as a silo. We look at social media on other platforms as well, and we use that a lot. And I think it's all about trying to get my artist audience into Spotify, right? Another kind of key feature for me is the follow button on Spotify. But really, instead of asking people to, hey, come and follow my profile, give them a reason to, right? You know, whether it's we've got a tour coming up, you know, we're talking about pre-sales, or we've got merch, you know, we shouldn't live in an age where we're scared to promote ourselves. It's so important. And especially if you're independent, you know, these are the small tools that are really going to help you. I mean, one of the most important playlists for us on the first week of release is Release Radar. We really see a driving force in our artists' streams when they are included in Release Radar. For that to happen, you know, we need to make sure that the audiences are following people's profiles. One of the coolest features that has happened in recent years for Spotify is sort of expanding the credit of the song. Written by playlists are a great spotlight for the songwriter and producer community. But I think from my perspective, it's a really great A&R tool as well. Miso, for example, on her next EP, and she can look at one of her favorite songs and she can see who produced it, who wrote it, and we might be able to then contact that person. But it also speaks to community. I mean, Spotify user playlists are really useful for us. We found that that's just such a great way of engaging with the audience. Of course, all the kind of official playlists are really important and they're great. But really, I love the idea that people are making like bedroom mixtapes with my artist's music. And what people forget is that like artists can see what their fans' playlists are. Like they're seeing when they're being added and seeing how many of those, of course, it all adds to the data that kind of we can then look at and go, actually, we should probably go and do a show in Poland, you know? As well as the back end, obviously Spotify for Artists has an amazing like stat-driven area. It's something where we monitor the live listener count for all of our artists. To be able to see live over the course of time who's playing it and how far your music's reaching, there's something really romantic about that as well as of course really informing what we do and what's our next steps. You know, there's incredible data there, and I think it's really, really useful.
Thank you, Ali, for those insights, and great to hear about the relevance of artist-curated playlists and how they can be a vehicle for not only artist expression, but also culture and audience building as well. Okay, time to wrap things up here, but just one final thing that's worth mentioning, definitely in the context of this episode. Please remember that you cannot pay to get on an official Spotify playlist, and you don't need to pay to get on one. We hear of third-party services offering guaranteed placement in exchange for money. These services are not legitimate, they violate our terms and conditions, and they shouldn't be used. To give your track the best possible chance of getting playlisted, just use the playlist submission tool. It's available for you to use for free in Spotify for Artists. And remember to pitch at least 7 days in advance. That'll ensure your track hits your followers' release radar playlists. A huge thank you for joining us for this episode. As always, we'd love for you to keep in touch. We are Spotify for Artists on Instagram. We are Spotify Artists on Twitter. Keep an eye on those channels, as well as Spotify for Artists itself, for more on masterclasses and other related programs. I've been Brian Johnson. This has been a Spotify for Artists Masterclass. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.